The Lord be with you and your family and your friends, as we celebrate this weekend the glorious gift of God's freedom given to us as a nation, our 4th of July weekend. I want to talk today further about discipleship, because we find in the Gospels stories about people that Jesus doesn't call directly to be his followers. We think of the story of Bartimaeus, who was a young blind man who was crying out, "Lord, save me." And after healing him, Jesus, of course, responding with generosity, he simply says, "Go, your faith has made you well." He doesn't say, "Come follow me." He doesn't invite him to join the band of disciples. We're just told that Bartimaeus, on his own, decides to follow Jesus on the way. He was captured and blessed by the presence of Jesus, by his compassion. Wasn't called to be a disciple, but on his own wants to know more about this man, wants to be in his presence, wants to be with him on the way. A second story in the Gospel of Mark is the story of the man who was possessed by demons. And we know the story of how he was living in the tombs and was hurting himself, and night and day he was screaming and gnashing himself with stones. And he cries out, "Why meddle with me, Jesus? I implore you in God's name, do not torture me." And so he pleaded with Jesus not to drive them away from that neighborhood. Legion is the name of the demons. And we know, of course, that Jesus cast the demons into a herd of pigs or swine, and they went off over the cliff and died. And the spectators explained what had happened to the possessed man and told them about the swine. And then this interesting twist in the story. Before long, they were begging Jesus to leave their district. But as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed was pressing to accompany him. And here's the interesting line. Jesus did not grant his request, but told him instead, "Go home to your family and make it clear to them how much the Lord in his mercy has done for you." At that, the man went off and proclaimed to the 10 cities what Jesus had done for him. They were all amazed at what they heard. Two stories of people who encounter the healing power of Christ, and yet we're given the indication that he's not inviting them to be part of the inner circle, if you will, but he has touched their lives in a way that makes them significant to the person of Jesus, significant as people he has cured and as he has exorcised a demon. And I think most of us find ourselves here. Perhaps we've not heard a direct call from Jesus, "Come follow me." But most of us find ourselves wanting to be with Jesus. It brings us to Mass each Sunday. We rejoice in his goodness to us. We rejoice in the blessings that he's given us. And we even witness him to others. Not formally called to be disciples, but to be witnesses to the love that Jesus bears for the world. We want simply to be with Jesus and sympathize with his message and ministry. Today's gospel, then, those who bring others to Jesus are none other than the disciples, and they have an important role in bringing people to Jesus. Remember the story of the men who carry the stretcher, and Jesus sees their faith, heals the man on the stretcher, but we hear nothing more of any of them that they follow Jesus, but they are participants in their trust and belief in Jesus. So we continue our reflection upon discipleship, considering the ways that even though we don't have a direct spiritual experience of Jesus calling us. As we continue to read the scriptures, we will hear his word, and he will call those whom he wants to be formally part of the clergy perhaps, or a religious community, but to all of us to be part of that body of believers who form the living body of Christ. We are part of that community that desires the reign of God to be upon us. May God bless you in your discipleship as you seek always to stay with Jesus and follow after him.